Welcome into Mavericks Today by Chat Sports. Jeffrey Cooperstein here with you. And on today's show, I want to discuss 4 lineups I can see Jason Kidd deploying for the Mavericks during the 25-26 NBA season. We're going to talk about a few different lineup combinations and how J. Kidd might deploy the starting lineup here in the opener against the San Antonio Spurs in just about a month and a half away. I can't believe we're almost here. Training camp beginning at the end of November. Let's just start right in with what my favorite lineup for this Mavericks team would be. I like this lineup more than I like Jason Kidd's favorite lineup, which we'll talk about later in today's show, but this is mine. And just so you know, I don't have Kyrie in any of these lineups because he's not going to play for the first half of the season. But if you want to imagine Kyrie in there as that point guard, go ahead and do so. But my favorite lineup to start the season at least would be D'Angelo Russell and Klay Thompson in the backcourt, with Cooper Flagg and PJ Washington at the wings, and Anthony Davis at the center. I think this is the lineup that gives you the best combination of both offense and defensive versatility. And the issue with just the Mavericks rotation and lineup in general, Anthony Davis wants to play the 4. He has stated that basically for the last 5 or 6 years. He views himself as a power forward, and he would much rather play power forward than center. And yeah, that's all great in theory, except his best position is probably the 5 in today's modern NBA. But the Mavericks have also kind of leaned into this, and they also want AD to play power forward. And I don't know if that's just the best use of his skills, of how he's going to, affect the game in the most positive way. I think that's from the center position personally, but the Mavs view it differently because they want to put AD next to another big man in Dereck Lively, and I do get the thinking behind wanting to play AD at power forward. The center position is way more physically taxing. There's a lot of more quote-unquote banging going on down there by the rim. You're having to box out bigger guys. You're having to deal with bigger guys in the post. So I understand that. And the Mavericks do need Anthony Davis to be as healthy as humanly possible this season if they're going to achieve anything. So their thinking is they're not going to put as much wear and tear on AD's body by playing him at the 4, and in turn, they're going to get a healthier, maybe more effective Anthony Davis on the offensive end if he's going to play more power forward alongside a Dereck Lively or Daniel Gafford. I think he's better suited as a 5, but I understand what his philosophy and what the Mavericks' philosophy is by playing him at the 4. I want to ask you guys, though, for today's pinned comment, what is Anthony Davis's best position? If it's power forward, type PF, or if you think it's center, go ahead and type C down in the comments. I think we're going to get a bunch of varying answers here with what you guys think Anthony Davis's best position is. This is Jason Kidd's favorite lineup, and one that he has admitted himself he's going to explore with and deploy quite a bit during the first half of the season. D'Angelo Russell will be your point guard, followed by Cooper Flagg at the 2, with PJ at the 3, AD at the 4, and Dereck Lively / Daniel Gafford at the 5. For purposes of this, I just have Dereck Lively there because I think he's going to be the opening night starting center, and I think that will be the starting lineup versus San Antonio for Game 1 of the 25-26 NBA season. I just think that throughout training camp in the preseason, this is what Jason Kidd's going to settle on, and this will be the starting lineup on opening night. And that's not to say it's going to be the starting lineup for all 82 games, and it almost certainly won't, because none of those guys are going to play all 82 games. So you'll see some chopping and changing, especially during the first half of the year where Jason Kidd really likes to experiment with different types of lineups and where he likes to figure out who matches up who's better suited coming off of the bench, what kind of rotation he wants to bring off the bench, and when to put his starters back in the game and all of that. Kidd really likes to just do a lot of tinkering in the first 25-30 games, and frankly, over the last couple of seasons, it's sort of cost the Mavericks and gotten them off to a little bit of a slow start throughout the first half of the season just because of all the chopping and changing and different rotations and this and that. And hopefully they can settle on a rotation earlier than normal, maybe in the first 15 to 20 games, and those guys can really just get a cohesive unit together and they're able to put something together, and they'll have a sense of when exactly they're going to go in, so these guys can get into a routine and they can start playing with the guys that they're going to be playing with more often. I hope that that's what they can do, but I highly doubt that ends up happening. And I think through the first 35, 40 games even, like through Christmas, you're going to see a lot of different lineups from Jason Kidd and this Mavericks team. My goal for this show, guys, is to get to 33,000 subscribers before the season begins. We have about 6 weeks, and currently we sit at 32,532 subscribers, so we need 468. I think it's an absolutely attainable goal for us to do so. So please hit that subscribe button at youtube.com/MavsTV. We cover the Mavericks better than anyone else here on YouTube with the latest news and rumors, analysis. We're going to do live watch parties, like we'll be live for opening night against the San Antonio Spurs and all of that good stuff, rumors as well. If you want the best Mavericks coverage for free right here on YouTube, subscribe right now. This is the lineup that I think gives the Mavericks the most ultimate versatility that they can possibly find. Look, you're going to have Naji Marshall playing point forward, which he absolutely can do, and he showed at times last year he could play a de facto point guard. You have Max Christie over there at the 2 as well, and I fall victim to this as much as anyone. I kind of forget about Max Christie as a piece for this team. The first 5 to 7 games that he played for the Mavericks, he was absolutely fantastic, and hopefully he can really blossom into a potential starter for this team long-term, into a potential very valuable piece for this squad. I have him at the 2, and then Flagg in Washington alongside AD, and when you're looking at versatility and defense and athleticism, this is the lineup that Nico Harrison and the lineup that Jason Kidd would envision. It fully leans into the Nico philosophy of positionless basketball, and that's not just the Nico philosophy, because every team wants to play positionless basketball, so to speak, but this lineup, especially if Naji is at the forward, really gives you the opportunity to switch everything on defense 1 through 5, and also gives you a little bit of playmaking with Marshall as well, who showed those skills last year when the Mavericks were in the midst of an injury crisis. So I do think that we'll see a lineup where Naji Marshall is playing the 1 at some point, especially in the first half of the year when you're without Kyrie Irving and your point guards are D'Angelo Russell, Brandon Williams, and Dante Exum. I could also see a lineup where you have D'Angelo Russell at guard with Naji Marshall out there to kind of be that secondary ball handler as well. And I know the Mavs are sort of deep at point guard with Brandon Williams and with Dante Exum, but I'm not really sure how much Jason Kidd views Exum as a true point guard. Maybe he views him as a little bit of a combo who can defend really well and who's also a good spot-up shooter. So I think the Mavericks have a bunch of options when it comes to their versatility, but if I was trying to play the most versatile lineup possible, that would be the one that I would roll out there. We'll get to one more lineup here in just a moment, but I do need to shout out today's sponsor, which of course is PrizePicks. And you and I make decisions every single day, but if you're right on PrizePicks, you can get paid. Today's show is brought to you by PrizePicks, where it is good to be right. PrizePicks is super simple to play. Just pick more or less on at least 2 to 6 player stat projections. If you get your picks right, you could cash in. And you can play PrizePicks in over 40 states, including California, Georgia, Florida, and, of course, Texas. PrizePicks invented the flex play, which means you can cash out even if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks does not hit. Week 1 of football was fantastic. The Cowboys came up short. We had a great Sunday night football game last night. So we're going to move on to week 2 here with this projection. I'm going to take the more on Terry McLaurin rushing, receiving touchdowns there on Thursday night football against the Green Bay Packers and take advantage of this free square. If you think Travis Kelce is going to have more than half a receiving yard against the Philadelphia Eagles, spoiler, he obviously will. Take the more there, pair it up with a few other projections, and you can win a lot of money. How do you play? Super easy. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. One more time, that's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That link will be in the comments and description of today's show. PrizePicks, it is good to be right. Let's talk about this small ball lineup here. And when you think about the Mavericks, you think about Jason Kidd, and you think about the philosophy and the, not culture, but the system that they're trying to run. Small ball doesn't even really factor in to what the Mavs are trying to do, frankly. But this, I think, would be a small ball lineup I'd be absolutely intrigued in watching. D'Angelo Russell and Brandon Williams in the backcourt with Cooper Flagg and Max Christie as your forwards and AD at the center. And you could exchange PJ Washington for Anthony Davis or Cooper Flagg, frankly, if you wanted to make it a really small ball and athletic lineup. And the reason why I bring this up is I don't know if Kidd is going to use this, but I would, because in today's NBA, It's all about speed and shot creation. What do the Mavericks lack for the most part? Speed and shot creation. But that lineup does give you a little bit of that as well. And you can throw Dante Exum in there, who's a really fast guy. He doesn't really create his own shot, but he's certainly a pace pusher on the offensive end, as is Brandon Williams, which is something that the Mavericks need. And I think this lineup would give you that. Now, is it a lineup that you can use more than 10 minutes max per game? Probably not, because you would just get overrun on the defensive end. And the Mavericks are going to have to be a top 5 or 6 defensive team in the NBA in order for them to make the playoffs in the Western Conference. I mean, it is an absolute gauntlet there in the West. Then the way the Mavericks are going to win games is by stopping teams and holding them to, the 5th or 3rd or whatever lowest points per game average here in the NBA. But at times when the Mavericks need a spark on the offensive end, I would like to see a lineup with at least 2 of the point guards on the team alongside a couple of the wings and maybe even playing a PJ Washington at the center spot. I want you guys, though, to drop your favorite Mavericks lineup down there in the comment section. I give you mine. I give you Jason Kidd's favorite lineup as well. It's your turn to give me your favorite 5-man lineup for the Mavericks down in the comment section. And the thing that I kind of, was racking my brain about as I was coming up with these lineups and just going through the Mavericks roster and the potential combinations that we could see is, oh boy, is Anthony Davis important to this team. Like, I do understand why the Mavericks want to try to preserve him as much as possible and keep him healthy, because they're going to be relying a ton on AD to be the best version of himself. And if he's not, the Mavericks team has no chance to do anything this year. They're going to need AD to play 65-plus games, and they're going to need him to be the 23-24 version of himself that he was with the Los Angeles Lakers, where he played in 76 games. He averaged 25 and 12. He averaged 2.5 blocks a night, and he shot 55.5% from the field. You would hope that AD can get a little better from 3 as well, but where he's going to have to make his hay is at the free throw line. AD is actually a pretty damn good free throw shooter, hovering right around 80%. Which is pretty good for his size. So hopefully he's really able to use his size. He's able to dominate, to get into the paint, get fouled, and get to the line and convert on those. The Mavericks need AD more than anybody else this season. He is the most important player to the Mavericks, and it's not even close. If we get that, the 23-24 version from AD, it's going to be a good season for the Mavericks. If we get the Anthony Davis that we got last year, who was battling injuries and who missed extended amounts of time and who was inconsistent at some points. Now, when he played for the Mavericks, he was pretty good, where he averaged 20 and 12, but you need the healthy and motivated version of Anthony Davis. I think he's motivated. I don't think there's a question about that, because people are kind of forgetting about him as a real NBA superstar in this league, but I do think it's a fair question as to whether or not he can stay healthy. Only time will tell, man. I mean, this team really is going to need him, and they're going to need D'Angelo Russell to be that lead shot creator. They're basically trying to get the best versions of guys who maybe have already shown the best versions of themselves in the NBA, but time will tell. That will do it for today's show, guys. I appreciate you for tuning in to Mavericks Today by Chat Sports. You can give me a follow on Twitter at Jeff_Coop27, always tweeting about the Mavericks, the latest musings around the Dallas Mavs. And man, we are 3 weeks away from training camp beginning in Vancouver, British Columbia. I cannot wait. And when that happens, we'll have you covered on a day-to-day basis with everything surrounding this basketball team.